Welcome to the Cyber Business Podcast, where we feature top founders and entrepreneurs and share their inspiring stories. Now, let's get started with the show.
Matthew Connor here, host of the Cyber Business Podcast. Today, we are fortunate to have Kenny Mullican, the CIO at Paragon Films. Kenny, welcome to the show.
Hi, Matthew. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being on the show. Before we get too far in, a quick word from our sponsors. This episode is brought to you by cyberlinks.com. That's cyberlynx.com. Do you know if a hacker's in your system? Most people and most companies don't until it's too late and the hacker's already done damage. A hacker's job is to bypass your security, so companies need a way of knowing when someone's gotten past their security. That's where Cyberlinks comes in. We've partnered with the best cybersecurity companies in the world to be able to provide our clients with the best solutions at the best price. So whether it's managed SIEM, SOC, EDR, MDR, XDR, you name it, we'll help you find the right solution at the best price. Contact us at cyberlinks.com. That's cyberlynx.com. And now back to our show. Kenny, for those who aren't familiar, can you tell us about Paragon Films and your role there as CIO?
Yeah, absolutely. So I always have to start this introduction the same way. Paragon Films is a plastics manufacturer, not a movie company, because that's what people always think when they see that films on there. They're like, oh, cool. What movies do you make? So for us, films means plastic stretch film. So imagine in your kitchen that, cling wrap that you wrap around the food. It's the same kind of thing, but just on a larger scale. So we've got these great big rolls of heavy duty plastic that there's two different kinds. There's hand film where you walk around the pallet and you wrap it up, or machine film where it's loaded with a front end loader onto a machine, and then a big robot wraps it all up with plastic, and it's all stretchy, and so it holds all those boxes in place on the pallet. So then when it ships, it all stays together without having to put it in a crate or put metal bands around it or something like that.
That's wild. You know what strikes me when I hear that is I'm constantly surprised and I'd say amazed at the magnitude of kind of industry and how, where we've come as a people, right? I mean, it's so hard to fathom 8 billion people, and it's so hard to fathom all of the stuff that's produced every day. And when you go to think of like, what business would I start if I started a business? I don't think ever in a million years I'd think films, right? To wrap around crates. You're like, man, how many? Sure, there are a lot of crates, but getting into that. But this is a very successful field, right? Endeavor industry company. And it's mind-blowing to think, do you have any idea, like how much film do you guys produce in a year? I know that's probably not your area, but just out of curiosity, do you know?
A couple 100 million pounds a year of this of the product for us, and we're not one of the biggest players either. There are definitely companies out there that do more volume than we do. We specialize in, for us, what we're trying to do is have the least amount of plastic with the greatest amount of holding power. So in the past, the way a lot of companies did this was they just made really strong film, put as much plastic as it took, and just wrap it up hard and sell it as cheaply as possible. And what we've tried to do is, it may cost a little bit more per pound, but you get more holding capacity with it. And so that's where we're being green. That's where we're looking at sustainability, is by using less virgin plastic to do the same job. Then we can help protect the environment and also save money to the customers.
That's wild. And then you mentioned virgin plastic, makes me think that obviously there's also recyclable plastic involved in that. How's that work with you guys in terms of, the recyclable versus the virgin?
Right. So everything that we make is recyclable. The tricky thing is just finding people to recycle it. And one of the challenges is that, imagine you've gotten to your destination, you've got your boxes on that pallet, and you've got this stretch film, and you cut it off. What do you do with it? I mean, most people throw it away, but there are companies that can have a service where you can give the film to them. But imagine it's got paper labels on it that you may have to remove. It may have gotten dirty in transit. It may be that there are other contaminants on it. So whoever it is that does the recycling has to not only collect all of that, but they also have to do processing on it. And then they end up getting it back into a form similar to what we get our raw plastic from, which is little resin pellets. But yeah, we're working with a few of the different processors now to try to get the best quality of recycled plastics so that we can put them into our films, and with targets of things like 25% of the film made from recycled, or up to maybe 30 or 40% of the film, being made from recycled plastics. But sometimes if the cost of doing that is too high, then that's where we direct people to say, instead of focusing so much on recycling the plastic in order to get it into it, let's just focus on getting the using less of the plastic. Because some of our competitors we've seen have said, yeah, we're doing a recycled plastic, but they've used so much of it that they end up actually disposing of more virgin plastic in the process of saying we're using the recycled plastic. So it gets a little bit tricky, but we're doing the best we can to try to be good stewards there.
That's awesome. I mean, and I can't imagine that it is easy kind of accounting when it comes to the pricing for all of that, the recycling stuff. And it's got to be a real challenge. I mean, as you kind of described it, it doesn't seem like recycling is a very um, efficient or easy process. And I guess therein lies the problem, which everybody's like, yeah, we know that, Matt. We've like that's been always the issue with recycling. But when you start thinking about it more than just like, well, we have a couple of cans, that in a household that you might recycle in a day. A lot of boxes from Amazon, sure, those get recycled. But things like this, where it's millions of pounds, and of okay, and I guess in the grand scheme of things, that's probably kind of a drop in the well, isn't it? A couple million pounds a year of plastic probably doesn't amount to that much in terms of how much plastic gets produced. Not to try to turn this into a recycling conversation, because that is not my area, obviously, but it's so fascinating, just the sheer quantity here. So, yeah, I just that's awesome that you guys are taking that approach, though, to really kind of do what you can. Even though you're in plastics, it's how can we be better stewards and kind of improve it, because there's no getting around the fact that we still need plastic in this world. It is still part of where we are, but we're going to a better place. And it's nice that you guys are doing that to kind of help along that journey, make it as kind of environmentally friendly as possible while we're still, doing that. Who knows what the future holds or how much more efficient we'll get with recycling, but I think that's clearly the right path, right? So
Sure.
kudos. Okay, on to tech stuff, because that's, well, I guess suppose that is tech. I mean, right? But let's talk about how you got into your role there as CIO. And one of my favorite topics is how you got there. It's, and so if you could take us through your journey.
Sure. So I've been at Paragon Films for 12 years as the CIO, but my journey starts way earlier than that. So if you go back into in the 90s, I got my start. I got my degree in computer science, and my most of my history is in software development. So I mean, I am just a real nerd when it comes to writing software and building systems and the technology that goes into it, and just solving problems by building software solutions. I just love it. And so back in the 90s, I was working on some projects around the area of video conferencing. So at that time, video conferencing, the ones that really worked were these H.320 systems that were in big businesses, banks and colleges, and some of them had it. They had these cameras and they had big TVs, and then they were usually connected up with something like a direct ISDN connection to their other location. And you went into this room and you did a video conference. And we knew that everybody wanted the Jetsons experience or the Dick Tracy experience. And so it was either they, wanted to be able to have that screen in front of them where they were doing a video call, or you were going to have the two-way wrist TV. But all those things at that time were still so far-fetched. And so, we're starting doing this on these PCs that at the time didn't usually have sound. Macs had sound, but PCs didn't necessarily unless you bought a Sound Blaster card. They
That's
had no
right.
cameras, so you had to buy a video digitizer board and then plug a video camera into it. And so we couldn't just sell a software product. We had to sell a whole thing. And I think at the time, our whole package was like $1,500 to get a camera and a headset or a little thing that looked like a handheld phone that was all something that you connected up and used with the software on your PC, also that you could do a video conference over a LAN. and we were working on doing it over POTS, so over regular modems, which at the time were like 33.6, modems.
Yeah.
And of course, the demand was it needs to be full screen, full motion over a phone. And, so that's what we're working at. So we had to get into things like video compression and in, IP, being able to use the IP stack. And then where it headed to was different messengers started to come out. Because right at that point, we weren't really that much even using the internet. That wasn't that common yet. So anyway, I'm in Tulsa, Oklahoma, working on this video conferencing stuff when this company in San Mateo, California, got wind of it, and they were called Connectix. And Connectix was known for making primarily software products for Mac that everyone who had a Mac had it. So they had this product called RAM Doubler because at the time Macs didn't have virtual memory. So if you loaded up, an application into memory, it couldn't page it off into disk. If you ran out of memory, you just didn't load any more apps or you unloaded something. So RAM Doubler allowed it to cache things to disk. And then they came up with something called Speed Doubler. And what that was doing was it was just doing more efficient use of memory swaps and, different memory on Macs. But they decided they had this idea to get into the hardware space. And so they made a video camera. They called it the QuickCam. And you may have seen those. It was a little eyeball shaped camera that sat on a little pyramid. And they started out for Macs and it plugged into the keyboard port. Well, then they made a serial port or a parallel port, I can't remember, version for PCs, but they didn't have any software to run on it. And so they said it would be really cool if we could do video conferencing or some type of streaming with this. So they bought our company and gave us jobs to move out to the Bay Area and start working on this stuff for them. And so that was really a turning point for me in my career to go from just working for a startup in Tulsa, Oklahoma, to all of a sudden being in the San Mateo area. My wife and I had just built a house and I uprooted her, moved her to California, and we're living in a condo in Half Moon Bay, which was pretty cool.
Nice.
I got into mountain biking and, all the cool stuff that you do if you live on the coast.
That's right.
But in addition to video conferencing, we had an opportunity to do all kinds of other stuff with video. So I started working on making things like a video editing application because it was all about, great, you've got this camera and you took a snapshot or you took a little video, but what can you do with it? Well, you want to do some editing and make it into a little movie, or you want to embed it into an email, or you want to create a photo album out of the pictures and, all these kind of things. So we're working on all that kind of stuff. And then my wife got pregnant. And at the time, it was just, it's funny to look at now because it seems so expensive to live in the Bay Area. We knew that we couldn't afford to buy a house. We had no, prospect of sending our kids to a school that was any good. All these kind of things. And so we decided to move back to Oklahoma. Now, fast forward a little bit, and those expensive houses that were like $500,000
Yeah.
that are now like $2.5 million for the same, 1,000 square foot house.
That's right.
Probably should have tried to figure out how to buy one and hold on to it to now. But anyway, we moved back to Oklahoma to be around family and friends with our new baby. But I had told Connectix at the time, we'd like to move back. I'd rather not have to get a new job. I'd rather stay working for you. And so they said, okay, fine, we'll give it a try. And it worked out great. And so then a year later, they figured out that they really were a software company and they were never going to be big enough to be able to keep up with the manufacturing of these QuickCams. So they sold that division to Logitech. And then it became the Logitech QuickCam.
Yep.
And so the group that I was part of was offered jobs to come over to Logitech. And at that time, then we started having a bunch of different form factors of the QuickCam. There was, it went from being an eyeball. It still kept that form for a while, but over the years it developed into some other things. And now I still have a Logitech camera on my PC right now. And they got into a lot of other things, but Logitech kind of took the same approach. They said, you've already been working remotely for Connectix, so we'll give it a try here too. So I worked for them for another 6 years. And that was a pretty cool gig because first you got to remember, I'm still making the same salary as if I lived in the Bay Area, but I have the cost of living of Tulsa, Oklahoma. So that was kind of sweet.
Yeah.
Plus, whenever they needed me to go out there, I just flew out and I got to meet up with the team and whatever team building exercise, like go to the beach or go do a scavenger hunt in downtown San Francisco, or take a bike ride in Napa Valley or whatever. Got to do those kind of things.
Nice.
But over time, as I moved up in the company and got into more leadership roles in software development, they weren't really configured for the remote thing yet. It wasn't as common around the turn of the century
Yeah. That's a
as it
fun
is
phrase,
now.
isn't it?
Yeah, but and so they started putting pressure for me to move back out there. But by that time, it's even more expensive, and so I ended up eventually leaving and just doing, staying in Tulsa for work. But I had to take a little bit of a step back and figure out what I was doing. And rather than staying in the high tech world, what I got into was more of the business side of computing. So I became a partner in a Microsoft Gold Partner managed services company. We were doing outsourced IT for companies. We were doing CRM deployments, but really got into the Microsoft stack at that time. And then over the years, got into a few different things. I was managing IT for a real estate investment banking firm, a real estate auction company. Trying to think, a car rental company. And so I was doing several different things, but it was usually all still in the area of either software development or leading software development teams. Up until 2013, when I got the call, I'm sitting in a cubicle banging out code, and I got a call from a recruiter who says, "You want to interview for this CIO role?" I'm like, yeah. And so went interviewed. By the time I got back to my office, they called and offered me the job.
Nice.
And so I went from software development to, okay, now I'm going to be over IT for a manufacturing company. Never had any experience with manufacturing at all before, had no experience with ERP systems. But this owner, the founder of this company, he was kind of a visionary in that respect. He'd had the same CIO since like 1989, and he was wanting to retire. And so he said, okay, we can bring in somebody new and fresh who doesn't already have all of the preconceived ideas about it. We'll have a year of overlap so the old CIO can show him the ropes, make sure he gets up to speed, keep things going while he's starting new things. And so it had this transition there while we got things going.
That's
So
awesome.
that's kind of a long-winded
Love it.
journey getting up to here I am at Paragon Films.
And you know what? One of my favorite parts was Sound Blaster. That was a blast from the past. I haven't heard that in, wow, it took me right back to, the early days, because I started programming when I was a kid, like 12, 13 years old. My dad brings home this IBM 8088 and it boots into basic. That's all it does. And so
Yep.
if you wanted to do anything, you had to write the code. And so I'd start slinging code. And this was when ATM machines, ATM, that's a little redundant, but these ATM machines, came out, and I was like, oh, I should make one myself. So I wrote up some code to make this ATM. And I was, the saver among my siblings. And I'd save every penny I ever made doing anything. And my brother would come to me and always want to borrow money. So I had my money in my little lockbox safe that I loved. But I had this ATM, program where he'd go in, punch in his pin, put how much money he wanted to borrow, and then he'd print out the sheet of how much he was going to repay and when. And I just had the most fun doing that. And then my dad designed electronic circuit boards, so I ended up just working nights and weekends for all these different companies that he was working with over my junior high and high school years. So that whole Sound Blaster takes me right back to those early days of those. You build your own little PC, and you're right, there was no built-in sound. It was a Sound Blaster.
You
Those
had
were
to
the
do
days.
things that no kids will have to do today. Dip switches.
Yes.
You had to pull off those little things and pop one on or flip that little thing in
Yep,
order to figure which IRQ you were going to use.
that's right. Oh, that's great. Well, okay, well, let me ask you, so now, having gone through and done so much software development over so many years, and having gotten to see technology advance from the early days to now, I think what's your view on AI when it comes to software development, IT, you name it, but where do you stand, and what are you excited about or
Oh,
not?
yeah. Well, that was one of the things that was cool about going into this CIO role was that it allowed me to take that passion that I had for complex systems and solutions. And instead of just thinking of it in terms of software, it was kind of people systems and manufacturing and organization and just a little bit bigger view of things. And that's been really helpful um, in dealing with something like a manufacturing company that has multiple locations and is in the process of going through acquisitions and private equity ownership and things like that, because it's not just about the tech anymore. And yet the tech has advanced so much that I can take even more advantage of tech than I've ever been able to before. And so that tech nerd in me, gets to use the coolest stuff. So at the very beginning, what it was just getting this company out of the Stone Age. I hate to say it, but this IBM AS400 based
Oh yeah.
type things running RPG code that got put in place in 1992 and hadn't been upgraded since. And saying, you know what, we're going to have to get Microsoft Office instead of Lotus Notes for
Yeah.
our email, and we're going to put have cloud-based things and move things into the cloud. And so starting that was Office 365 in the cloud, but eventually it was moving our ERP system up into the cloud. And so then we start having cloud databases and Azure services, and even security becomes cloud-based. So instead of thinking about cybersecurity as everything's in our network and we just got to make sure we got good firewalls and keep the bad guys out, it's, well, keep them out of where? Because we're everywhere. We're all over the cloud. We're in this company's servers. We're in that company's servers. So now we have to think a lot more holistically about cybersecurity. So this is just an aside because I know we're getting back to AI, but
Yeah,
when I
no.
was having to tackle cybersecurity in our control catalog, I was like, okay, I never really had to do this before because I was a developer. So I went and got my certified ethical hacker,
Nice.
because I was like, all right, I want to know how the hackers think so that I can then help, build up our systems and make sure to protect them and get good cybersecurity partners. We've never been big enough to have a whole department dedicated to providing that security. So we work with really good partners to make sure that we've got systems in place and we've got a 24/7 knock and SOC and those sort of things.
Nice.
But that does lead right into AI, because in the process of taking advantage of all those new technologies, it just so happens that in order to really take good advantage of the AI that's really been emerging over the past couple of years, you need to have already taken those steps to modernize your infrastructure, your ERP, your data. So all that work that we did to work towards getting all of our data curated and into Power BI data sets is going to pay off. All that work that we've done of moving into cloud services and getting things hosted in Azure, that's going to pay off. And most recently, getting things into Microsoft Fabric, for Microsoft-based ecosystem of AI like Copilot, that's the kind of gold standard. If you've got your data in Fabric, then you're kind of in the right place for using the Azure AI components to be able to do that. So, all that stuff is there, but that's all just kind of foundational. We had to get security in place and we had to have governance in place and understand our data and make sure that the data had been secure and is being curated into the different data sets that are needed for sales or for logistics or for operations or accounting, finance. And then what was it? Now I can't even keep up anymore because the years just all run together. But what was it? 2 years ago or 3 years ago that all of this LLM stuff just really hit the scene. Um, and that blew me away. I mean, like I'm sure it did for a lot of people, but we'd already seen the inklings of it with Siri and Alexa. The fact that you can talk to them and they understand you no matter how much you mumble or how much you try to disguise your voice or use a weird accent, it still seems to get what you say. At least it understands the words. It doesn't always turn around and do anything useful with them. It may say, I don't know how to do that, or, I don't have access to that or something like that. But it was still just that fact that you can talk to it in natural language. You don't have to use codes. And so all of a sudden, when we've got this things like Chat GPT, and you can just start talking to it in natural language, whether you're typing or using your voice, and it gets what you need and is able to then help you with that. And then to see how freaking fast that has progressed, because in the very early days, it was really, really good at real general knowledge things. If you're asking it about, how American government works or things that you could look up on Wikipedia, I mean, it was great. It could talk to you about that all day. But sometimes when you got into a little bit deeper technical knowledge, like, oh, is there a way to do this in my Dynamics 365 finance and supply chain management? And it says, why, yes, there is. Just go to this screen, find this menu, go down to this tab, and click this checkbox. If it's checked, it means this. If it's unchecked, it means that. I'm like, wow, that's perfect. That's just what I needed. So I go over there and I open up the menus and I look, and
Not
there
there.
is no
Yeah.
menu item like that. Never has been. It wasn't that it used
What's
to
the
be in
thing?
an old version. It just made it up, hallucinated.
Uh-huh.
And you're like, well, shoot, this is, of limited usefulness if it could just make stuff up. But fast forward to now, and I find it's rare that it does that. I mean, most of the time, if it doesn't know, it just says, I can't find anything about that. But if it's something that's out there that there's information, I mean, more and more and more, it's able to help navigate that, find the answer for you, and then even guide you through it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, recently, I tell you, I've been using it for things like, I need to do something. I need to stand up this new service that we're going to test and try to use for something. And it's complicated because you got to go through all these screens in Azure, and you have to set up, client secrets and keys, and you've got to write some of the code in C#.net, and some things may be over here in some Python, and then you've got to do some stuff in a SQL database. And I've been able to do some experiments recently where I haven't written a line of code, but I've just gone through and just talked through it with the AI and said, here's what I'm trying to do. Help me figure out the best way to do that. Okay, now what's wrong with that? What am I missing here? What would be best practices for it? And then finally, okay, guide me through that. And boom, I've got this step-by-step guide that I can just walk through and, set up the things that are needed, add the code into my code base, build it. Oh, I got an error. It did this error. Oh, that's right. That's because we forgot to add this package. Just add this package and now try it. Boom. Okay. And so doing things that I know would have taken weeks before that can be minutes or hours. And that's just one person doing it through this, just a chat interface where you're just asking for help like it's someone who's standing by. And so I just can't even, it's hard to even fathom how it's going to jump from that to I'm not talking to it and it's telling me what to do, but I'm just telling it what I need. And it says, all right, let me go work on that and get back to you. And then later it actually has the ability to do that orchestration. So instead of telling me how to go set that thing up, it just goes and sets it up and then says, hey, I got this all set up. You want to check it, make sure it looks good. Or here's the code. I've built it, and I think everything's good. You ready to start testing? And some things like that.
Could you imagine having that back in the old programming days? I mean,
No.
the hours of pounding your head on a problem, and you're like, what? And whether it's the syntax, error that you just missed, or what, it's something minor, or even a large concept, to have this sort of assistance, it's just mind blowing. I mean, yeah, I would have killed for that. I mean, I think everybody would have. And now, I really think that it's one of these things where it empowers people so much that I really don't think it's a matter of replacing, programmers, necessarily for some time. I think it's really a matter of supercharging them. I mean, now it's just you're as you're better than 10 programmers when you've got that. I mean, you're just so much faster and better. You're the ultimate program. It's insane. I mean, it
There's just
makes
so many things that are that have been part of programming in the past that we've already kind of gotten away from anyway, when you can use a UI to help you scaffold something where you just
yeah,
say, here's my database, create me some classes that can handle it. That's not even using AI, but that's still bypassing just going through and manually typing everything.
yep,
But then when you can even take that further, I agree. For a while, what we were saying is when we're interviewing somebody, instead of asking them the hard tech question and seeing if they've memorized the answer, it's more about can you get at the answer?
Yep.
And so for the longest time, that meant can you Google? Can you search the web and find the right resource and dig through it enough until you find a sample or you find, somebody on a Reddit that, had an idea that then linked you over to somewhere else, and then you finally got it and you tried that answer. But now the interview question is more, can you use AI to get there?
Yeah.
And so I'm really rethinking. I'm really starting to rethink the whole way that we hire into IT, because for a long time, as a small IT shop, we're like we don't have enough space to bring in green people who are going to be taught how to do everything. We need somebody who can come in and take over that whole aspect of the business and run with it. But what we started hearing was that people are going to college and they're getting a degree, whether it's in programming or whether in data science or even in cybersecurity, and they graduate ready to go hit the ground running, and nobody will hire them because they only have 0 years of experience, or maybe they managed to get a little experience in college, but they still want that 3 years or 5 years or 7 years of experience. And so I heard recently about a friend whose kid got his degree in cybersecurity from a really good college, and he's working in help desk. I mean, sure, it's good, it's good experience, but he's not doing what he went to school for. And so I'm really thinking that there's a way that we can say if those guys, in addition to being taught what they need to know to have that base knowledge, can also learn how to really effectively use AI. And I don't think there's any question of that. I mean, the kids today are being brought up in an AI first generation. They won't think twice about it. But if they know how to use that AI well, then I maybe could bring somebody in who's fresh out of college, but who's really smart and who got a good foundational knowledge of what the terms mean and kind of how they work. But then when it gets to actually doing the implementation, that I could bring somebody and say, you're going to lead our cybersecurity efforts here. We're still going to keep outsourcing a lot of it. You don't have to take it all on, but for all those things internally where we need somebody to go through and really work on going through the list of things, starting with the most critical and down to the high level priorities, and go the things that just require you to go find where is it, where's that installed, is that Java package really needed? Let's upgrade it or remove it. Those are things that if they don't know how to do it, they could get AI working right along beside them and quickly get up to speed. And they ought to be even able to take on higher level roles where we say, hey, I want you to write your own procedure manual. I want you to tell us how we do this. And you can do that with the help of AI because there's a lot of knowledge in there. There's already best practices. So you don't need to make it up, but you don't have to go find somebody who gives you their boilerplate. You can just work with it and say, well, here's the problems that we're solving. Help me come up with a playbook for that we can then establish as our SOP.
I would argue that it should no longer be about experience so much as it is cultural fit and aptitude and motivation. So if you've got some fresh out of school person, with who understands the fundamentals, they've got an aptitude to learn, they're smart, they're excited about, the field, they want to grow in it, and they're a good cultural fit. I would argue that that is a much better hire today than somebody with 15 years of experience in the field who may not be as good of a cultural fit, may not be as energetic, may not be as motivated as that young person who now is getting an opportunity because they're going to be, like I said, I think 10 times more effective. It's like you're hiring 10 people if you've got the right motivated person. You get somebody who's not motivated, well, 0 times 10 is still 0, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
it's really about getting that person who fully is committed to the job and excited about it. And I think when you hear people like Mark Zuckerberg talk about how they're going to get rid of all their level 1 programmers, I think I think it's a dumb decision because the reality is they're not going to have, if everybody did that, we would have this massive gap. People would stop going into the field and eventually, we would stop having people. It just doesn't work. And maybe AI takes over all of those jobs at some point, but really all of them? And at what point does that happen? I mean, I don't know. AI is moving so fast. What is it, 2 years from now? Maybe,
Yeah.
we have no idea. Once it gets out of chat, and it's like you were saying, where it's executing and just going and setting, standing up the system, doing everything, that's going to be a crazy time. But we're still going to need people to manage and supervise that and kind of do that AI thing. I think in the interim, I think you're right. You go after those entry level people who can really be effective. I think that's the way to go about it. I
Yeah.
don't, nothing wrong with the senior person, but I think when people are discounting the young people coming out, I think that's a mistake. I think there's a lot there.
Yeah. I wonder if things will, I mean, here's something, it's not exactly the same, but it's along the same lines. I just read about how Shopify's CEO said, no new hires unless you can demonstrate that AI can't do it. And so, I mean, I think that may be the direction that it heads. But then if you say, but if you do need to bring in somebody, then maybe you can bring in a greener person, but that is going to be someone who works with the AI, because it's still not at the point where you just say, hey, AI, do this job.
Yeah.
You just got to be with the help of AI, people are doing it. And so I think we're going to start seeing a lot more of that. Hopefully we see more of that than we do of the thing that people fear, which is they're just going to start doing massive layoffs and saying, hey, we don't need all you people. We don't need to get that much done. We just need to make these people use AI to do all of your job.
Well, I think there will be a large amount of that, but I think that where it gets displaced, I'm a firm believer in that technology is the great equalizer, right? So you take a look at places like, take a look at Japan, right? Japan has a very finite resource of land. Most of it is uninhabitable due to mountains. So their inhabitable land is that much smaller. And it would be crippling if they didn't leverage technology to be able to live efficiently. Let's say just parking cars. Their car park is incredibly efficient, right? You drive it up, it takes it into the little building. Everything is parked within inches of each other, highly efficient. And they've done that in so many ways because technology allowed them to do it. And so it's done that. We see example after example of how technology does that. So I think if you apply that to this on kind of a macro level, you say, yeah, lots of people will lose their jobs. Absolutely. But now that some kid or one person can say, hey, you know what? I want to do a startup. Do you need, if it's not like massively intensive in terms of let's say you're not doing an AI startup, but you're doing a startup and AI can help you do that, right? Now you're starting up with, if it's just you and your buddy, you're now starting up with a team of 20. If we're saying that AI is a 10x, and you get one developer in there, and now you're 30 people. You're a 30-person startup with a payroll of three. So I think we're going to see a lot more of the startups happening, being a lot more creative, a lot faster, and people are going to be able to make money doing things that we never dreamed of. And the cool things are going to come out of nowhere and be like, oh crap. And you won't need, if you're not going to try to be an open AI or an X, AI and be one of these AI plays, but you're leveraging AI in ways and doing things, you don't need to have hundreds of millions or billions of dollars to start up and do that. Now you get to leverage AI. So I think there will be displacement, but I think we're going to see a lot of really cool startups, much like we did when it was the race for cars, right? When there were so many automobile manufacturers, at the dawn of the industrial revolution and automobiles, and a handful made it. I think we're going to see the same with AI, but I do think we're going to have a lot of startups that succeed because they're able to fill these gaps, and you're going to be able to take an idea and execute really fast and make some money pretty quickly, where you couldn't do that before. I mean, go
Yeah.
back to when we were younger. What did it take to start a company and build the code and build the website and that was tough.
Yeah.
Now, I mean, it takes a few dollars. You launch your website, and boom, you've got a beautiful website for what, $20 a month,
Mhm.
and it's up and running. And then you do whatever, right? You can build an app with AI like that. I think that's where AI really helps the person who's displaced, they lost their job. Cool. You know what? I could do that job better anyway. And you do your startup. So I think we'll see a lot of that. I don't know. What do you think?
I totally agree. I think that they've got to have the motivation and the ambition to go start a company and not just go work for the man. But you're totally right in where that's headed. I was just at this AI co-pilot and agent conference out in San Diego a couple of weeks ago, and a lot of the talk by the big thinkers there was that the big companies today are figuring out how to put AI in their products. The startups are starting from AI. They are AI first. Their first thought in there is, okay, how do we do this with AI? And only when we reach the end of what AI can do, then we're like, okay, we may have to get a person. But mainly we start with AI. And to add on to that, what the prediction was made, and this is mind blowing, is that they think we are getting very close to the first one person $1 billion valuation company.
Definitely.
And so, you're exactly right. This is where you don't have to have a whole bunch of people and keep going out and getting teams or even, outsource a bunch to programmers overseas or anything. It's more about, hey, this is an idea we have, and we can get it up to speed really fast with AI working with us and for us. And then even things like marketing. I mean, look how fast you can have it take on your LinkedIn and your, social media posts and your emails and just all that kind of stuff using AI. And if you do have to have, phone system where people call in the call center, that can all be AI managed, and you can use chatbots for things. And yeah.
Yep. No, I mean, it wasn't that long ago where it was you're basically looking at about $100,000, per employee. Then it gets up to two to four. Okay, cool. So even to reach that $1 million mark for companies, that at one point was a 10-person company, and then it became closer to a 5-person company. And so to think that it's a $1 billion company, I mean, even in by today's standards, that is what at least 5,000, at least, somewhere in there. You're looking about 5,000 employees, somewhere in that range, plus minus. Now to be one person, that is impressive. I mean,
Yeah.
but I think we're going to see it. I think we're probably seeing, $100 million companies that are, that are just a handful of people, thanks to AI. And so, yeah, it's wild to think. So yeah, somebody could lose their job and be starting the next $1 billion company, but have a payroll of one. That,
Yeah.
I mean,
It's just like any technology. People are going to say, but what about these people? They won't have a job. And it's like, yeah, but does anybody want to go back to typist pools?
right.
Does anybody really want to go back to whole rooms full of people running adding machines or, these kind of things? These are jobs that people had in the past. And now you can do that yourself using a computer. Those people had to find other things to do. They're not just all out of work, but hopefully they upskill and they can use this technology instead of just doing a manual service.
Couldn't agree more. And I think with this, I mean, people used to talk about how you could learn anything from YouTube, right? You could learn how to play the guitar, the piano, you name it. There's lots of great stuff you can learn from YouTube. But now with AI, literally, you just have to want it. Whatever you want to know, it's right there. You've got a teacher teaching you whatever it is. And so I look forward to seeing what people do with it. And if people, I think of all the countries in the world where we're going to see that sort of, entrepreneurial spirit and that innovation that, because of that, I think it's going to be the US. And I think that's where we're going to kind of, pull ahead of people because we think differently. I mean, it's funny when you travel outside the States and in Europe, and not knocking anybody, but the thought process is different. Americans, one of the things that I think was really funny is that I met these Brits. We were talking and they were like, what's funny about all you Americans? Every single American we meet thinks that they're gonna be, a millionaire. They're gonna win the lottery. And so they vote, and they were going off about voting, and so they vote as if they're going to be, that 1%. And because they all, everybody believes that. And I was like, huh, interesting. there's something to that. I think a large percentage of this population is like, yep, you know what, I'm going to get there, I'll be there. Even if you're working a job, we still have that mentality, whereas the Brits don't. They were going like, we know that I'm not going to be rich, I'm never going to be rich, so I'll take my month off mandated from my job, and I'll travel, wherever I can travel to, and I'll accept my lot in life as that's where and I was just like, like, really? What? And they just accept it. So I think that is part of what really drives this country forward is everybody truly believes it. And you look at the Japanese, and I was, lucky enough to spend like 3 years stationed in Tokyo. When they try to do what we do in terms of like our work ethic, like Americans, we love to work. Like there's not everybody, mind you, but the thing that gets everybody up and going is we are really driven. Whereas the Japanese, when they try to do, they're killing themselves. They're the salary man, as they call them. They were just killing them. They were literally killing themselves. So I get excited about what happens with the US and AI and all of these startups because we have the mentality for it. It's what drives us. And it's like, ooh, all I have to do is ask the right questions. And the AI is going to tell me how to execute this. Brilliant. Like I don't have to be a software engineer. I don't have to be a business, mogul. I don't have to be some sort of savant. I got all the information and creativity in the world at my fingertips. I think we're going to see great things because of that. So I'm
Yeah,
excited about it. Yeah.
totally. Yeah, you were talking about how you could learn anything from YouTube. I experienced that recently where I went and took a sourdough bread making class from this baker. And I learned how to do it and I made it and it was really good. But then as I started kind of getting into it as a hobby, I had a lot of questions. Oh, this didn't quite work right. Or, what do I want to do if I want to use this kind of flour instead? Or what if the temperature, is colder, then what do I do? And I didn't really have the ability to go back to that teacher and ask all of these questions. I wasn't one of those that's going to keep pestering her with an email or a phone call. So I go in Chat GPT and I just asked all those questions. And it was like the best baker expert telling me, oh, well, here, sure, you can do that. You might just, let's adjust the hydration amount that we're using a little bit there, or let's take it out of the refrigerator a little bit earlier, a couple hours earlier, and let's put the temperature up a little bit higher. And I think that you'll see some good results. And sure enough, everything it told me was spot on. And it was just like I had this expert. And so instead of just, I don't know, I'll just try something and see, I was more like I had this you know, somebody to help me through it and help me look
Yep.
good. And I don't mind telling people that I had AI help for it.
Yeah, baked by AI chef or baker, right? So that's awesome. I mean, I think that's I love that's where we're at, and I think it's so exciting because we're really at this kind of the precipice where it's limitless what you can do now because you've got access to all the world's information, and not just by Googling it and maybe being right, but like it's like having the world's smartest person ever as your tireless assistant. It's insane. So I think it should be a fun time. I think a lot of people are worried that we'll suddenly have no jobs, but I think that even when you get to that future state where we have robots doing everything, the interesting part is I don't think we have a Wall-E future where we're all sitting around fat and lazy, not moving, and robots are serving us. I think what happens is that the things like the arts and yeah, arts, but artistry, people, I don't know if you like things like watches, you'll never want a watch that was made, all mechanic, all this beautiful mechanical piece that was just done in a factory by a machine. Kind of loses its soul. You don't want to necessarily watch a play played by robots, even if they look like human. There's this human aspect to it. You don't want to necessarily see art that was created by AI. Who cares? It loses the human aspect of it. So I think what happens is all of the day-to-day stuff, just like what happened when we got washing machines and when we got microwaves and everything, frees up our time. I think we go to a future where the if you will, the content creators, but the creators of things, you look at Hermes, right? They create these incredible products that are a high quality, And they're not just like expensive, they're phenomenal quality. So when you look at it, it's like, wow. And it's real craftsmanship. I don't think that ever goes away. I think that will always be there and people will always value that from other people. I think the economy just shifts in a way. So it'll be interesting to see, especially, but I think we got a long time to go with this, AI powered entrepreneurship, which I think will be fascinating. Sorry, I just go off on rants, but I think that's fascinating. I mean, what do you think? Is it that too kind of optimistic of a future, you think? Or
I don't think so, but I mean, I am a hopeless optimist. I mean, I am
yeah,
so optimistic about things, and this technology makes me even more hopeful because of that. Like, I don't ever want to retire, not because I'm a workaholic. I don't want to go to the office every day. I don't want to put in long hours doing something that I have to do, but I don't want to just sit around doing nothing either. I just want to do what I want to do and not have to worry about how much it pays. And so, like, I think I will always be into the newest technology. I don't ever want to quit. I want to, as old as I get, I still want to be staying on top of this stuff. And if that means that instead of being CIO of a company, that I've started my own thing and I'm using technology to do something cool that nobody else has ever done, and maybe it's just me, maybe it's me and a couple of buddies, I don't know. And then I can spend some of my time just doing leisurely or art type activities or travel or go to concerts or these things that, and no, I don't want to go to a concert that's just played by robots. I really do want to see,
yep.
people rocking out. And so yeah, I think there's a lot of good things to happen. And that is, to me, the whole purpose of it is that we free up our time from doing the mundane tasks and use our time in things that are meaningful. That's what I think AI is best at, is just freeing up the stuff that doesn't need to be me.
Couldn't agree more. And I think that just I'm the same way, right? We're like, there's just no way I'm ever retiring. It doesn't even make sense to me. Like the idea of retirement, so foreign. Like, why? Like, I like to play golf. I like going to the beach. I like, hanging out, whatever. But to have nothing to do, like, and I get it. Some people retire and then they get into other things. They, philanthropic things. They, maybe they volunteer in the community. They have their routines, but I don't know. To me, I'm right there with you. And I think it's one of those things that once again kind of sets us apart from other countries. That mentality. You and I are not the only two people who think like this. There are a lot of us out there, especially in this country, where it's like, what would I do? Like, it's not like because we're workaholics. It's because we love it so much. And that's the thing. When somebody loves what they're doing, you can't beat them. You think, the Michael Jordans, the LeBron James, they hate it and they just go and they just grind through their, no, they
Uh,
freaking love it. And that's why you can't beat them. The people who are grinding and just trying it and they're doing it because they want something out of it, yeah, you can beat them. But when you've got a country full of people who are doing what they love doing, you can't beat them. That's just it. Like, and so for me, I'm right there with you. I think that, it's really exciting to see. I'm looking forward to seeing what happens with you in the future. Well, if you do end up starting that, because, as we talk about this stuff, I'm like, yeah, what new idea should we do? And I just want to get on there. And I don't know if have you played with Grok?
mhm.
Rock is so cool because it does that thinking thing where you can see the thinking. That one blows my mind, where you get to read its thinking. I was like, that's wild. Anyway, look, I could go on and on. This has been so much fun, and I can't thank you enough, for coming on. But before we leave, Kenny, can you tell everybody where they can find out more about you and where they can find out more about Paragon Films?
Sure. Well, for the company, www.paragonfilms.com, no dashes or anything, just Paragon Films. And for me, I'm on LinkedIn, and so you can find me there, connect, and follow what I'm following there, or send me a DM and connect that way.
Awesome. Well, thanks for coming on, Kenny, and until next time.
Thanks for listening to the Cyber Business Podcast. We'll see you again next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.